Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for attending today's webinar on ABLE accounts. You might notice you can't see others in the webinar today. We have a new format, so please put your questions into the Q&A, and you may introduce yourselves through the chat function. My name is Sharon Rich. I am the Director of Trust Services for Aged Trust, where we manage special needs trusts for seniors and persons with disabilities who may need to qualify for Medicaid and have too much money. Aged's Pool Trust was established in 2004, and we are located in Central Florida but cover the entire state of Florida for our services. All of our clients are on some kind of government benefit, so please use us as a resource. We know a lot about Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, disability. We're happy to speak with you at any time. Today's program is approved for continuing ed credits for guardians and attorneys and is being recorded. You will receive an email after the webinar within a week from Kate at trustaged.org with a certificate of attendance and a copy of the presentation, a link to the recorded presentation. This will be posted to our Aged website under our webinar training. We have a large audience today, so again, please put your questions into the Q&A and we will leave time to answer them at the end. I am very excited to introduce our speaker today, John Finch. I've known John for actually quite a while now. He serves as the director of ABLE United, Florida's ABLE program, managed by the Florida Prepaid College Board. John played a pivotal role in launching the program in 2016 and has since overseen its continued growth, enrolling more than 13,000 Floridians and helping them save over $120 million in tax-free ABLE accounts. John also serves as vice chair of the ABLE Savings Plan Network, a coalition of ABLE program administrators across the country committed to expanding financial access for people with disabilities. Previously, John spent a decade with the ARC of Florida, where he advocated for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and launched a statewide dental network to address access gaps for this community. He lives in Tallahassee, Florida with his wife and their 3 energetic boys. So please help me in welcoming John Finch. John, take it away.
Sharon, thank you so much for that warm introduction. I appreciate it. And hopefully throughout this presentation, you're going to learn tons of information about ABLE accounts, but then really to highlight a lot of the different updates, enhancements, and some just changes that have happened both here that were state-led in our organization, as well as federal changes that have been implemented that are going to impact this program specifically for next year. So excited, and thank you, Sharon, and the team at Aged Trust for having me to present today. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. And so hopefully most of you, if you've joined today, you probably have heard about ABLE accounts in one fashion or another. Whether it be it helped somebody enroll in an account, maybe you yourself have an ABLE account, but we're just going to talk high level about what this program is, and then as we go about, we'll talk about some of the updates that have taken place over the last handful of months, even since the beginning of this year. So let's get started a little bit and bring us all up to speed on just why this program exists to begin with, and talk about a little bit about the history of this program. So the reason ABLE accounts exist and why ABLE United exists is because of the passing of the Achieving a Better Life Experience Act, better known as the ABLE Act, that passed all the way back in 2014, that allows states to create these unique tax advantage savings and investment accounts for the disability population. Here in Florida, we passed our own legislation in July of 2015 and actually launched July 1 of 2016. We were third in the nation behind my friends in Ohio and Nebraska. And really, if there's anything I want you to know and understand is what an ABLE account is. And so we say it's more than just a savings account, it's investing for a better life experience. So ABLE United is very interesting in that this account offers Floridians with a disability a tax-free way to save without negatively impacting their public benefits like Medicaid or supplemental security income. And what I really love about this program is really this started in the grassroots movement when a bunch of parents met almost 20 years ago and started saying, hey, why can't we start saving and investing for the future of our children without negatively impacting their future? And so their hard work and advocacy, this is the reason why this program exists. And at that dining room table here in the top left is Jen Sikora and her son, Sean. Jen actually started advocating for this, was at that dining room table having a discussion with parents. And really that movement started in the Down syndrome and autism community, but when it passed, really kind of opened it for a variety of individuals with either a disability or a severe diagnosis. But since it's spread, it allowed people like, for example, Alicia here on the bottom, who is a wheelchair user, to save for a wheelchair accessible vehicle. As her parents start to age, this is a great way to be able to transport her and meet her needs. And she can now save in this account without jeopardizing her Medicaid benefits. Also, Elliot and his mom, Sandra. Now, Elliot's not even on public benefits. It's a great way for him to utilize funds from either working or utilizing his account to help offset some expenses in his life to really help him achieve a better life experience. And he could do that with the help of his mom contributing to his account. And as I mentioned, the federal legislation allowed states to create this program. And so each state had to pass their own state legislation and kind of say, hey, who's going to run this program for the state? And so here in the state of Florida, they chose the Florida Prepaid College Board to run this program. If you're familiar with Florida Prepaid, they've helped millions of families across the state of Florida save for higher education expenses. They manage about $12 billion in assets for Floridians saving for those future expenses. And so ABLE United, that's the name of the program, but we are a direct support organization. So basically it means we have a staff, state employees that run this program, but there's a nonprofit board that has appointees that kind of provide oversight of the board. And so those are, for example, the chair of the Florida Prepaid sits on our board, but then the House, the Senate, and the governor's office gets to appoint individuals to represent and provide oversight of this program. Now, we can't do it on our own, right? Although I'm the director of the program, I'm a director of one, I don't have a staff. We do utilize a lot of vendors. So we have a great public relations team. We also utilize something called Vestwell. They are our program management. They are a fintech organization, company based out of New York. They handle the record keeping system. So when you log in, have that user interface is created and managed by Vestwell. If you call customer service, that's Vestwell as well. And so they actually provide this kind of program management for about 20 other ABLE programs across the country. And so they run the state of Florida as well. And I am checking the QA box. I don't see we have anything open, but just a reminder of that, you'll find that questions and answer box. That's a great place to go and enter any kind of QA questions you may have as we go about. All right, let's keep going. All right, so what is an account and who's actually eligible to have an ABLE account? And so there's 3 requirements. 2 are federally mandated, and 1 is unique to each state depending on how they're set up. The unique one is the residency. So when the ABLE legislation originally passed, it basically stated that an individual can only enroll in their state's ABLE program. However, some states were going to launch at day 1, and so they amended it to allow residency to be optional. And so each state gets to pick and choose if they're going to be open up for just their state residents or if they're going to be open up for nationwide enrollment. Right now, ABLE United, Florida's program, is only open up to Floridians at the time they apply. Now, if they move out of state, they could take it with them. However, there may be benefits for their new state's ABLE programs, such as state tax income credit deductions, etc. And so we also get an appropriation from the state to run this program. And so we want to make sure that we're utilizing taxpayer dollars to really serve Florida residents first. Now, the next two requirements are true of all ABLE programs, regardless of what state you're with. One is the individual has to have an onset of a diagnosis or a disability prior to age 26. Doesn't matter their current age, just that onset had to happen before age 26. Now, some big news. This is a big update starting January 1 next year. So about 50 days away, we're going to be launching what they call the ABLE Age Adjustment Act. And that act actually amended the age of onset from 26 to 46. And so that takes place January 1, 2026, which is going to open the doors for a lot of later onset type of diagnosis. So this could be, we'll see on the next page, like lupus, multiple sclerosis, maybe a traumatic brain injury, or maybe a mental health diagnosis that occurred after age 26, but before 46. They'll now be eligible next year, which is exciting. We estimate that's going to be about 400,000 or 500,000 more Floridians that are adults that are going to be eligible for ABLE. So very exciting to see where that's going to go. I moved my screen around. Sorry about that for a second. Not only do they have to have a severe disability or a diagnosis, they do have a severity requirement. And so the severity is based on the Social Security standard. So for example, if an individual is on SSI or SSDI, or maybe even survivor benefits from a parent who's retired, they meet that severity requirement if it's disability based. If they're not on SSI or SSDI, they can self-certify in a test that they have a severe functional, physical or mental impairment with marked and severe functional limitations. We do have a physician certificate available on our website that they can discuss with a doctor and keep on hand. But what's unique is that this information is you keep it. We don't request it as a program. You just self-certify. If the IRS were to ever ask for the information, you would need to provide that diagnosis paperwork or that certificate saying, hey, I meet the requirements. So it's not something you have to upload during the enrollment process. So as I said, this is it's more severe ongoing disabilities or diagnosis. And so I just want to provide some examples that the IRS has given us. So like I mentioned, this started mostly in the autism and Down syndrome. Those are going to qualify, but it could be later in life. So it could be psychiatric types of disorders, PTSD, severe ADHD, bipolar, schizophrenia. It could be blindness, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, things that are congenitally like Down syndrome or Fragile X. But it could be other and later onset type of disabilities, as I mentioned, lupus, multiple sclerosis, where they may be genetically diagnosed, but the severity of it doesn't happen until their late 30s or early 40s. Those will now all qualify. What's also unique about the ABLE account itself is who actually owns the account. Now, the individual with the disability, they are the beneficiary of the account, but they're actually also the owner of the account. Now, we know not everybody can manage their own finances. Maybe they don't have the capacity. Maybe they have a rep payee that's going to be funding their ABLE account, and so they can't manage those funds. So if they don't have capacity, there's a hierarchy of who could serve to manage this account. Or if the beneficiary does have capacity, they could actually choose somebody. So it could be, a friend, a parent, a sibling, whoever. But if somebody else is managing this, and because the individual can't, then there is a hierarchy. This is from the IRS, and it's anywhere from legal guardian, power of attorney, parent, spouse, sibling, grandparent, and even a representative payee for Social Security Administration. And that could be an individual or an organization. We call this management administrator type person an authorized legal representative, so you may hear that as we talk about. Now, something unique, and you're the first one to hear this from here. So Sharon, you owe me lunch or something. I don't know. But this is the first time I presented on this slide because this is a brand new feature that actually rolled out about a week and a half ago. So this is something called authorized users. And so a question we often received was, well, what if there's multiple individuals that's helping this individual? Or if you're like an organization and you have multiple individuals that are helping manage the multiple accounts that your organization oversees, there's something called authorized users that just launched, We're actually in the process of updating our FAQs. There'll be an email out to current account holders with this information as well. But high level, you still have your kind of ALR admin person position that can do all the things a typical administrator would, right? Make contributions, withdraw, change user access, update account information. But now they'll be able to appoint some additional authorized users, such as an account manager. Maybe that's somebody, if you think of a parent, two parents wanting to manage this account, you could appoint the other one as an account manager where they can go in and make a withdrawal, put money in the account, kind of oversee what's going on. There could be contributors. So maybe you have a grandparent or another individual that's invested into the family and they want to help put money in the account, but they don't need to be taking it out. They could serve as a contributor. And maybe you have somebody else, a financial representative or somebody that wants to just provide some high-level oversight of the account, but not really perform any actions on the account. That could be a viewer only. And so those all types of things just happen. Now, Social Security Administration rules, when we talk about rep payees later on in this presentation, all those types of rules still apply for an ABLE account. So just keep that in mind. But this new feature is available under the settings tab in the top right. So be on the lookout for that email. And so it should be exciting. All right, Pam, well, I hope you're doing okay. Just saw that message come in. All right, let me see Q&A real quick here. This is from Angelina. It says, I was recently advised by Disability Rights that we cannot be the holder of an ABLE account for our ward because the facility where he resides is rep payee. We have guardian of person or property. Is this correct? Right. So this is where I'm going to answer this question because it is a little bit of a tricky situation, right? Because Social Security has rules when it comes to excess resources, right? So in the month, if there's still leftover Social Security funds, there's certain rules that apply on what you could do with those funds. You can put those into an ABLE account. Now, Social Security says that if it's an ABLE account and the money is coming from Social Security into the ABLE account, and that individual has a rep payee, then the rep payee needs to be the one managing the ABLE account with the Social Security funds. The tricky part is when there's funds from multiple sources. So maybe rep payees putting some extra Social Security funds that were left over, a family member's contributing to the ABLE account, the beneficiary's working a little bit and they're putting their earnings into the ABLE account. Now you have this kind of mixed bag of resources in the ABLE account. That's where it gets tricky because technically Social Security says, hey, if it's straight up Social Security money, the rep payee needs to be managing the ABLE account. However, in the case of this individual, if you're a guardian over the person's property, then you're higher up on the IRS guidelines and should be managing the ABLE account. And so that may take precedence, especially if it's a mixture of funds. And so it gets very convoluted when it comes to putting Social Security funds in its mixed. And so that's the best advice I can give you, Angelina. I mean, you might have to review the rep payee rules and what Social Security talks about ABLE accounts. It's a little heartening because it's disheartening just because Social Security isn't in charge of ABLE accounts, the IRS is, right? So sometimes we'll see IRS says one thing, the Treasury, who oversees IRS, and they have final regulations, and that's how we have to go by. Now, Social Security has rules when it comes to leftover funds, and so you have to kind of abide by those. So it is a tricky situation, and that's the best answer I can give you at this point. But good question. All right, let's keep going here. Let's talk about the account itself now. What happens? What does it look like to enroll? Is ableunited.com is our website. So take a look at this screenshot now. It's completely going to change. We're actually, another update we're doing, we're relaunching a brand new website on January 5th to go alongside with this ABLE age adjustment. It's going to look completely different. And so it will still have the same ABLE United logo, but the feel, the look of it is going to be completely changed. But that's our main Marcom site. When you go to the actually enrollment site is when you will go over to the Vestwell site, and they're going to ask for information to open the account. Just like if you're opening up any other financial product, right? Email address, date of birth, name, social, why they're eligible, right? So the type of disability, did it occur prior to age 26, next year 46? Is it going to be a disability that's going to last their lifetime? There is a minimum $25 contribution to finalize the setup of the account, and that coincides with selecting where that $25 is going to go, and we'll talk about that. What's unique is anybody can contribute to an ABLE account. As I mentioned, right, Social Security can put leftover funds in here. Somebody that's working and earning, they could put their earnings into the ABLE account. A third party, mom, dad, grandparent, a life insurance policy, a trust. We see a lot of trust funding an ABLE account. Those are all allowed. Now, it is limited. Currently, it's $19,000 per calendar year. And that's an aggregate amount from all sources. Now, next year, that's actually going up to $20,000. What's unique and part of the big, beautiful bill language that passed this summer, we'll talk more about that here shortly, but one of the things is they changed how they come up with the contribution, annual contribution limit for ABLE. Historically, it was tied to the annual gift tax exclusion, and now that has changed. And so we have a kind of predates it a year, and there's some basically some additional influx of how it's calculated is going to change what that number is. And so the IRS will publish that annually. So next year it's 20,000, while the annual gift tax exclusion is still staying at 19,000. Now, the maximum the account can get to before an individual can no longer contribute is $500,000. Other funds that can be contributed to an ABLE account include rollovers from 529 plans. We already talked about the other types of areas. Now, there is a rule that allows people to contribute above that 19,000 or next year 20,000, and that's if they're working and not participating in a work retirement plan. So if they're not, if they don't have a 401k or 403b or something like that, they can actually contribute above that annual contribution limit up to $15,060 this year or $15,650 next year, or their income, the lesser of those two, their earned income, that is. So, but lots of ways to put money in the account, lots of ways individuals contribute, but where does that money actually go? What's unique is we have basically 8 savings and investment options individuals can choose from. We have something very simple like an FDIC savings fund, right? It's not invested in the market, so there'll be a small interest earnings. I think right now it pays close to 4% annually, but that changes and fluctuates depending on the treasury. There's pre-designed portfolios, so if somebody's interested in actually investing the funds, those could be conservative, moderate, and growth, or they could kind of pick and choose where those funds go. If you notice, these are not managed by John Finch, state employee. These are managed by large entities like Vanguard, BlackRock. Florida Prime is actually the state of Florida's kind of money market account. It's a unique product that we're able to offer since we're part of a state entity. And so people can pick and choose where those funds, but they are very diversified. So it's kind of like if you think of like a mutual fund ETF type of product, it's that type of product that we're offering in an account. All right, so you're putting money in, it's saving, it's growing. Now, what about actually taking the money out? What does that look like? If you're like me, I'm the spender in my family, and so I'm always curious of like, okay, when do I get to take money out and use it? And so typically there's 3 ways to get funds out of the ABLE account. An ACH to a connected bank account, loading a prepaid loadable card through TrueLink Financial that's tied to the ABLE account, or requesting a check. Now, for a prepaid card and an ACH transfer to a connected bank account, that usually takes 2 to 3 business days. I want to assure people this isn't a bank account you're setting up, it's an ABLE account. And so, think of an investment account where you're transferring money from one entity to another. It just takes time to process and clear. As I mentioned, we do offer the prepaid TrueLink card that costs $2.50 per month, and that can be enrolled when you log into the account, and they'll give you a unique TrueLink login to create that account. You can also request a check. That check can be mailed to you, somebody else. It's up to you, and that takes 5 to 7 business days, just depending on holidays and USPS. The good thing is when money is taken out of the account, part of that money is going to have earnings, and those earnings are tax-free as long as they're used for qualified disability expenses, which we'll talk about here on the next slide. We always recommend individuals to keep tax documentation along with the receipts and why something is a qualified expense. We won't ask for it, but the IRS could and Social Security could if you're retaining funds past the end of the month. So types of qualified disability expenses are very broad. Treasury gave us 13 broad categories. We're going to kind of just talk about some of those. So health, if you think of co-pays, doctor payments, maybe additional therapies that aren't covered through Medicaid, like equestrian therapy, maybe a massage, basically anything that's going to help improve or maintain their health, independence, or quality of life. It could be education, so whether it be higher education, online schools, back to school shopping. It could be housing related, so maybe that's paying rent, utilities, putting a down payment on a home, or paying for your annual insurance or tax costs, which if you're like me in Florida, it seems like they keep going up. Transportation, whether that be buying somebody's first vehicle, modifying a vehicle to make it more accessible, or even using ride sharing services. Legal fees could be used to help set up a trust for that individual. Maybe assistive technology. So if you think of modifications, maybe to a wheelchair or the necessary technology to help support them. And this could even be post-death expenses like funeral and burial. There is other expenses. However, Treasury really hasn't provided any additional details outside of a cell phone and a cell phone plan being a qualified disability expenses. Typically, tell individuals, anything that's going to help support or help them maintain their independence or quality of life, then it's going to be qualified. And that can include basic living expenses, so like groceries. So what may not be qualified could be, giving funds away, alcohol, tobacco, anything that could be negatively, and gambling. There's a lot of references of don't gamble with your able funds, or those taxes, or those earnings portions could be taxable and a 10% penalty. And best of all, we try to make this the best value for Veridian, so there's no cost to enroll or maintain the account. There's no check request fee. Depending how money is saved or invested, there's some annualized investment administration fees. The returns on the account are net of this fee, and those can be up to $2.90 per $1,000 in the account. And there's some optional fees like paper statements, $20 annually, or that prepaid card fee. So I see there's some questions on here. Is this only for residents, or is this a national thing? And that's perfect timing, because if you look at my next slide here, that's actually each state, as I mentioned, gets to set this program up, and it really depends on where you're at. So here's some just ABLE program comparison data, right? So right now there's 46 states and the District of Columbia that have ABLE programs. About half of those are open up for nationwide enrollment. So if you think about here in Florida, for example, ABLE United is only open to Florida residents. However, if you take, for example, like Ohio, they're open up nationwide. And so you could, be in Hawaii and have what they call a stable account, which is Ohio's program. We all have the same federal regulations. So for example, the tax exemption, the tax-free tax growth, qualified disability expenses, how you utilize the account, all that's going to be same. The back end might look a little bit different. Some we use Vestwell, some others use a census. The fee structure is going to be a little bit different. ABLE United is free. Others charge either a quarterly or annual fee, or even a monthly fee. And then Medicaid recovery is a big thing. We'll talk more about that. Florida doesn't have Medicaid recovery, but there are some states that are actively seeking Medicaid recovery out of an ABLE account. So be wary of that if you live in another state and have Medicaid. Just some high level, the numbers on that. If you see 214,000 accounts nationwide, I actually just got the September numbers in. That's closer to 290,000 accounts now. 2.7 billion in assets under management nationwide. Here in Florida, we have about 17,000 enrollments. We're actually closing up on 18,000 enrollments, about 148 million now. And so a significant amount of average account balance, which is mind-blowing. We thought we would have a lot more accounts and lesser assets, but It's been kind of the reverse there. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about public benefits, which hopefully you probably are all better experts than I, but I'll talk a little bit of how this works alongside ABLE accounts. But before that, I wanted to see a question here that talked about, please talk about withdrawals to from the client's bank account and recurring transfers to the ABLE card. Is there a reason it takes several days to transfer to the card or bank account? Will there be a new mechanism to set up recurring top deposits to the ABLE card like we do with the TrueLink cards? Oh, good questions. So, part of the reason why it takes so long, excuse me, usually it should only take 2 to 3 business days. It's just depending on when that takes place. For example, if it's after 4 o'clock, if it's a holiday like Veterans Day we had yesterday, and the reason why it takes so long is because whatever this individual is saved or invested in, it is an investment product. And so it has to be actually sold. Those funds have to clear, and then we have to take those cleared transactions and transfer it over to the ABLE card or to a bank. And so unfortunately, that's just the standard timing. We've looked at other possibilities. And right now there is no way to make it any faster than the 2 to 3 business days. The question of regarding to recurring deposits, that is something we're actively pursuing. Hopefully that will be released later next year to where you could just say, hey, I want to take a systematic withdrawal from my ABLE account and put it towards my connected ABLE card, or send me a check or direct deposit. There's a way to do that manually. There's a form on our website where you can manage systematic distributions, or you can call customer service to talk about that. But right now, the ABLE card's not one of those options, unfortunately. Well, let's keep moving along here. Let's talk about Medicaid. You probably all are much more knowledgeable about this, but high level, there's different types of Medicaids. I think Sharon always has this document here. I have it here on the side of me here of all these different SSI Medicaid type programs. Typically, they provide a variety of healthcare costs. There's waivers as well, provide more robust types of services. Generally, funds in the ABLE account or even taken out of the ABLE account are disregarded when determining Medicaid eligibility. Now, the concern when we first launched was, okay, if I'm on Medicaid and I pass, does the state go in and take all my ABLE account funds? No. So here in the state of Florida, you're still allowed to pay for any outstanding qualified disability expenses paid first. So funeral and burial, if there was outstanding mortgage payment, a visa bill, whatever the case may be. Once that all has been settled, then you would need to transfer those funds to the beneficiary's estate. So if the beneficiary's estate is subject to Medicaid recovery, that is over 55, has been on Medicaid, doesn't have a surviving spouse or a child with a disability they're in care of, then their estate may be subject to Medicaid recovery. I always encourage people to talk to your legal financial advisor on how to best utilize the ABLE account for your unique situation. I always joke that ABLE's great at saving money, but it's really geared to helping people achieve a better life experience, and that's kind of hard to do if you've passed. So think about, what is it something we want to save for? Is it more independence, like living on your own? Is it that vacation you always wished you could go on but couldn't? So just think about that planning. We talked a little bit about Social Security Administration and how they look at these accounts. Here's some additional rules. So if an individual is utilizing SSI, Supplemental Security Income, that monthly check that it's almost going to be $1,000 next year. I think next year it's going up to 995 or 96. So getting close to hitting that mark. But there are some additional rules if you put SSI funds into an ABLE account. First of all, is the maximum account limit. Typically, it's $500,000. However, if an individual is receiving SSI, anything above $100,000 in an ABLE account will count towards that resource limit and could impact SSI benefits. Okay. Also, if an individual is utilizing this to pay housing expenses, they need to withdraw it and spend it in the same month. As I mentioned here, if a representative payee, if that individual is assigned a rep payee and they're transferring those SSI or Social Security funds over to an ABLE account, Social Security prefers that that rep payee be the one managing the account. As we talked about earlier, it is a little bit trickier when there's a guardian involved on who manages that ABLE account. So keep that in mind. Here's an example of housing. For example, Amy here takes a distribution of $500 from her ABLE account to pay in May to pay for a housing expense in June. Okay, so she takes money out in 1 month, retains it past the end of the month, and then pays whatever that housing expense is. Guess what? Since that's a housing related qualified disability expense, Social Security will count that $500 as a resource at the beginning of June. So how do you avoid that or reduction in SSI benefits? Just have the ABLE account pay it directly or paid in the same month. That way you don't have those issues. Here's some additional guidelines that Social Security has provided as it relates to rep payees managing ABLE accounts. You probably can't click on that link because it's not live for you on the webinar, but you'll get this presentation and you could just search rep payee ABLE accounts and you should be able to find it if you search online. It has a lot of just rules. We meet most of the requirements, but just something to be weary of, especially as it relates to returning conserved funds. Some of our biggest issues have been is if there's been a change of rep payee, that new rep payee managing that old ABLE account, there's some things that come up. Also, some other issues that we have seen is especially when this ABLE account gets over 100,000. Typically, SSI is supposed to be suspended, but they keep Medicaid eligibility. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case in at least one case I'm aware of. And there's also some tricky points. So I usually encourage individuals, hey, if an individual's on SSI and they're utilizing an ABLE account, just keep that balance below 100,000 and you should be in the clear. And then also with that, Social Security, there's been at least one case I'm aware of where Social Security they're starting to judge what's a qualified and non-qualified disability expense. However, Treasury oversees ABLE accounts, not Social Security, so there's been some trickiness there as well. So just keep receipts and documentation, and you should be in the clear. Other federally means tested programs that don't look at ABLE accounts include SNAP benefits, which hopefully will start back up. There's been a lot of news on that lately. But any kind of subsidized housing that's federally run cannot look at ABLE accounts, as well as FAFSA. If somebody's applying for college, the ABLE accounts are excluded. All right, so I'm just going to look in here real quick. I don't see any additional questions coming in, so feel free to use that QA as you see fit. Let's keep moving along here as we talk about trust. Now, I'm not an attorney. This is all for educational information, but this is just to provide you some high-level information about how ABLE accounts work with special needs trust. I'll probably go back to this slide, start with this slide instead. So, high level, there's first-party special needs trust, self-settled. So that person received money that wasn't planned for. So it could be maybe they received a settlement, unplanned inheritance, injury award. That's a D4A. There's a qualified income special needs trust, a QIT or Miller trust, you might hear it. That's basically lets people earn more. And then there's a pooled special needs trust that kind of pools other individuals' funds together so they can reduce administrative costs, but then keep their eligibility for Medicaid and SSI. There's also third-party trust, right? Somebody else has set this up, a loved one, aunt, cousin, grandparents, insurance policy that gets funded. The great thing with this is there's no Medicaid recovery on this type of account. And then you could set it up to where if that individual passes, those proceeds can go to someone else. But that's always somebody else's money. And all these require somebody with a legal background, and that can set this up, and it won't be me. But just some differences between the programs, between a trust and an ABLE account. Yes, we both shelter funds to maintain eligibility for Medicaid and SSI. ABLE has, limited fees, they're a little more flexible. Typically, no Medicaid payback on death. However, it depends on what state you're receiving your Medicaid services. There are limits on how much you can have in this account and how much you contribute annually. And of course, there's no tax burdens for having an account. And so the trust just depends on the type of trust you have set up and the rules that are associated with those trusts. So keep that in mind. The great thing is I put special needs trust versus able. Really, able accounts just offer you an additional tool in your financial tool belt. We don't, if it's a small amount of money, yeah, an able account may be a great place, but often we see a trust being set up and then they just fund the able account, and that able account provides greater flexibility on using it for food or shelter, and not worry about jeopardizing those benefits. Of course, it also has tax-free earnings accepts, also protection against creditors, free to enroll. And so often we see them working in conjunction with each other, not an and or, but a both. Why not? You can have both. While that trust is a lot of times we see it's more estate planning, long-term planning, or significant funds coming in and we're planning for how do we shelter those so they can keep their Medicaid and SSI benefits. All right, now let's talk a little bit about death of beneficiary. Now, this is a more of a hot topic button just because ABLE has been around almost for 10 years now, and unfortunately, individuals have passed. And so, as I mentioned, Medicaid recovery was a big concern that, hey, is ABLE going to go in, freeze the account, and the state's going to come in and take those funds? Typically, no, this is our state statute. This says what our process is. Typically, we distribute that after all expenses are paid to that person's estate. So keep that in mind if they're under Medicaid estate recovery. Here is what the final regulations depict. Basically, they said, hey, it's up to that state and how they're going to run their ABLE program. But the big thing to know is that you can have what they call a successor designated beneficiary on the ABLE account. Right now, federally, and how our system is set up, it does have to be a sibling who also qualifies for ABLE. So it's very limited on who could be in that role. And then all the other rules would apply before we could transfer those funds over. So, for example, if there's federal estate tax, if there is any outstanding qualified disability expenses, such as funeral and burial of the previous beneficiary, those need to be paid off. And then if they're in a state that has Medicaid estate recovery, that takes precedence first. Then after all those have been met, we could transfer that over to a successor designated beneficiary. Now, hopefully we're going to be expanding this in 2 to 3 years down the road to allow other individuals. There just may be adverse tax consequences if we do. So how it currently works, if there's somebody that's authorized on the account, the ALR position, they still would be able to withdraw funds to pay outstanding qualified expenses, funeral and burial, if there was leftover bills that needed to be paid. We would just freeze the ability to contribute to the account. But once that has been taken care of and they use all that fund, we typically wait for some type of certification letter saying, hey, I am now the personal representative on this person's estate, and please send the funds to us. And that's typically how we've seen it run in the past. And that could, unfortunately, takes time, right? If you've done probate or any of those types of things, it takes time to set up an estate, to have somebody oversee that. Typically, that's the process. Now, if this account doesn't have an authorized legal representative, we would just freeze the account until we get notification of who's going to be in charge of managing the assets of that personal representative letter. And so that's kind of how the process works. So far, it hasn't been as smooth as we hope, but we always encourage people, hey, the goal of this account is to be expensed in their lifetime, so it doesn't have to go through this estate process. See another question here. It says, could an individual on SSI who meets eligibility to open an ABLE account put the proceeds from a settlement into the ABLE account? What if it's over 20,000? Yes. So we've seen individuals who have either been like a Social Security back pay, they get a small personal injury award settlement. Yes, all those could fund an ABLE account, but it is limited this year to 19,000, 20,000 next year. If it's over that amount, we would usually send those funds back to whoever contributed it. So sometimes it takes a little bit of planning. Like I know one attorney is looking at a structured settlement to where those proceeds are funded into the ABLE account, and they're structured in a way so it doesn't hit that annual limit. It may require you to go the special needs trust route where, for example, if it's a $100,000 settlement and they have maybe 10 to 15,000 they could expend on, paying off a vehicle, housing, etc. They could fund, 20,000 in the ABLE account next year, and then use the remaining 60, put it in a trust, and have that trust fund the ABLE account. So just depends on your unique situation. As always, please talk to a financial or legal representative about your unique situation. All right, well, let's talk about some just other changes that have happened, right? So we talked about age adjustment happening next year. It's going to really double the eligible adults next year, where their onset had to happen before 46, but regardless of their current age. That's exciting. However, there's been some other federal changes that have happened that are going to impact the program, that actually already have impacted the program. And the biggest being the, what we used to call Enable Act. But the Enable Act, there were actually 3 kind of provisions inside of the ABLE Act that were set to expire. One of those being the ability to contribute above the annual contribution limit if the individual, the beneficiary, was working and not saving for retirement. The ability to roll over college savings plans into ABLE accounts, that was set to expire this year. And the ability to take advantage of the Savers Credit. So I'm not a tax professional, but I know the Savers Credit is for more lower income individuals to reduce their tax burden, and they could use their ABLE account as that retirement type of account and take advantage of that. Well, those are all set to expire at the end of this calendar year. But part of the big tax bill that passed this summer, the big beautiful bill, it included the ABLE provisions that allowed these to actually not sunset and to continue on to perpetuity. So great news, those aren't expiring. So next year that all still applies, which is great. Also, and I didn't mention it here, but I talked a little bit about it earlier, that the way we calculate the annual contribution limit was also tied into this package. And so that it gets adjusted as well. Basically, it's going to increase the ABLE, how much can be put in on an annual basis. It got moved back a year, so inflation, so there's more inflation taking effect on that. So we expect that amount to grow every year. So that was historical type of things that have happened this year, things that we're still watching out for. Because remember, ABLE's still kind of new, and there's still a lot of movement on a federal level to enhance this program even more. There's a lot of strong advocates, both in the House and the Senate, that want to make this even more flexible. And so something we're watching right now is called the ABLE Employment Flexibility Act. It was introduced last year and got reintroduced this year as well. But basically, it's a great benefit, but basically it would treat ABLE accounts as a retirement type of an account, where right now, if an employer, has an employee that has an ABLE account, if that employer is saving in a retirement account for them, like a 401k, well, guess what? That 401k is going to count as an asset resource and could jeopardize their Medicaid SSI. What this bill would do would say, hey, can we make the ABLE account the retirement account, where if the employer wants to contribute to it, they can currently, but that would count as income. But if this passes, it would say, hey, the employer could make the ABLE account the retirement account, match those funds, put it into the ABLE account, and that not count as income for the beneficiary. So it's very interesting. It's exciting. I know there's definitely some need for this because, if you've heard of them, individuals, they start working, and lo and behold, they get a retirement account that they weren't prepared for, and now they might be losing their Medicaid because they have this retirement account, and that's something we don't want to happen. So hopefully this legislation would kind of address that issue and really make ABLE account even more flexible. So kind of exciting there. As I mentioned, Q&A is live, so if you do have questions, feel free to put that in there. But I'm just going to give you some hypothetical situations. We see these kind of questions come up, and if this comes up, this is something things to consider, basically. We kind of already had this question come in. You had a 35-year-old female with spina bifida receives a small one-time inheritance or a personal injury award and is currently receiving Medicaid funding. So, working with that attorney, they may want to do a spin down plan. And if it's, below 19,000, they could chunk that in an ABLE account, or they might want to structure it over 2 years to fund the ABLE account, or they may have to go the route of a pooled trust and then fund the ABLE account that way. So each situation is unique. What if the individual, this is a 51-year-old with Down syndrome, lives in Florida, has a Florida guardian, but has siblings and family across the country that want to help pay housing expenses? And so we saw this come up actually recently, where family members out of state, they want to help this individual. We know if we give them money directly, guess what? That's unearned income. It could be bad. Guess what? That guardian, they could establish the ABLE account, provide the gifting portal, which is something everybody gets. They get a unique gifting portal they can share with family and friends. That family and friend could actually set up a gifting page or gifting account where they could say, hey, maybe I want to put $100 a month into this person's ABLE account. They could create that gifting login and be able to do that. So that's kind of exciting. And so we've seen it where, hey, families want to help out, pitch in money, and then that guardian can say, great, now they can use their ABLE account to pay for better housing expenses without jeopardizing their SSI and actually not reducing their SSI check. So there's a great way to utilize the ABLE account to pay for those housing expenses without having an in-kind of support maintenance reduction. Here's an individual person that has schizophrenia and bipolar. They have SSI, but they are not able to manage their payments, so they have a representative payee. So once again, ABLE accounts say yes, you can have a representative payee manage the account, or the IRS does. The same rules apply. The question, as we talked about earlier, gets tricky when you start having commingled funds in the ABLE account. Some of it's Social Security and some of it's not. Who's managing that account? Social Security says, hey, if it's Social Security, leftover funds, then it needs to be that rep payee. And so just be weary. There's some unique things that could happen. And it may be beneficial if this person had a guardian that they may have to take over the rep payee duties. Individual, this is another example, autism, mother, 8-year-old has autism, dad has to pay child support. Guess what? They could put that money into an ABLE account. However, that may still count as income, unearned income, and could impact SSI. Big point I want to make on this slide is that ABLE accounts shelter resources. They do not shelter income. So if individuals start working more and they're like, all right, I'm going to earn a ton of more money and not impact my SSI or Medicaid because I'm depositing in an ABLE account, that may not be the case. So keep that in mind. ABLE shelters resources, how much money somebody has, not their income. Here's an example of somebody that has split residency, right? Maybe actually ran into somebody that half the time they're in Colorado, half the time they're in Florida. And which account, should they open the one in Colorado or should they open the one in Florida? And so basically, whatever best suits the family, right? So for example, this example, a dad living in Pennsylvania. Well, Pennsylvania has state tax income, and they have state income tax reductions if people contribute to their state's ABLE program. So there may be some unique tax benefits in your state. There may be just some other benefits of being with your state's ABLE program. So always encourage individuals. There's a website called abletoday.org that's part of, that provides kind of a resource of the different ABLE programs out there. And so that's something you can utilize as well. I see we have about 5 minutes left, so I encourage anybody, we're wrapping up here. If you have some Q&A, go ahead and put it into the Q&A box here. But there's tons of resources. If you haven't visited our website, I encourage everybody to go there. If you go under the contact, you can actually schedule a 15-minute webinar with me, or if you have a family member that wants to have a little more customized discussion, we can have that. And then we have customer service as well, Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. And so I'm going to go on here. If you have any questions, feel free to put that in the Q&A box. I know there's some questions about copy of this recording. I know Sharon can ask, but Sharon, that is my presentation. I'll let your team kind of take over, and just wanted to say thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, that was really great. A lot of information, John. We really appreciate it. And some of the changes are interesting. With the 20,000 next year, not tying it to the annual gift exclusion. That's very interesting. And some of the additional things you're able to do with the people that can view the accounts and things like that.
Yeah,
And thank you for going over the fact that special needs trust and able accounts really do work together. They can serve different purposes.
yep,
With a pooled trust, for instance, you can reduce your countable income, by putting your income into the pooled trust. And we do often make distributions from trust into able accounts also.
yeah,
And paying expenses for housing out of an able account, it doesn't jeopardize SSI benefits. So they each have their place,
yep,
and can work very often. The special needs trust, the pooled trust, along with an able account, works very well for persons with disabilities. So thank you so much for giving that presentation. I know before I don't have the question that came into us before the presentation, but it did have to do with converting 529 money into an
yeah.
ABLE account and the timing on that. Do you have any thoughts on, and I know this is like a
Yeah,
really loaded question, like when is a good time to do that
yeah.
or anything like that?
Yeah, so it really depends on the unique situation, right? Because I've ran into families that in a 529 account, they've saved, 50, $60,000 because they thought their child's going to go for college and wanted to pay for all 4 years. And, but Florida's limited to 19,000 this year, 20,000 the next year. So sometimes families have to do multiple years of rollovers to get the account set up. But usually it's setting up the ABLE account first and then rolling those funds over if it's coming from a 529. And the process, unfortunately, does take time. I think for us to get the forms and then for the 529 program to send the funds. If you've ever done a rollover, I recently did a retirement rollover and I feel like my money was out of the market for 30 plus days. And I'm like, all right, when are we going to get back in here? I'm losing some precious value. So that is something to consider. But the timing of it, but it is the limit too. So just keeping that in mind. If it's over that 20,000, you're going to have to go over multiple years. But I also encourage individuals sharing that some of our universities and state colleges have done amazing job offering programs. So if you search for, Florida Center for Unique Abilities, they have partnered, I think, with 20, 30 different state universities and colleges that offer unique programs specifically for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities that they will take 529 plans to pay for those programs. So encourage individuals to say, hey, yeah, roll it over to Able. It's great because you can still use it for that. But there may be some educational expenses you can utilize too.
More flexibility than you may think. Yeah,
Yeah.
very good. So, well, do we have any more questions that have been put into I think there are maybe a couple more.
Yeah.
As a legal guardian rep payee, can you designate a sibling as beneficiary of ABLE account if he doesn't have any disabilities?
So Linda, this is where it gets a little murky, right? Because the final regulations say that the individual to not have any adverse tax consequences, that the designated beneficiary has to be a sibling who qualifies for ABLE. However, what we're looking at and what I think Virginia does is, hey, we're going to disclose to you that there could be some adverse tax consequences if it's not a beneficiary that qualifies for ABLE or a sibling that qualifies for ABLE. And in some situations, that may better be suited than it going through probate, right? Like, because if you have to put it through an estate process and then it gets transferred over there, and that it could take 3, 6, 8 months longer, just depending on the situation and how much money's involved. So what Virginia has done is they just do a lot of disclosure language and say, hey, it's up to you to report any kind of adverse tax consequences if you don't meet these requirements. I think Florida's going to eventually get there. Unfortunately, we're not there yet.
That would be tax consequences from the IRS for
Correct.
improper distributions and stuff, and yeah.
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, oh, do you pay, the earnings portion? Do you pay a 10% penalty on it? Are you willing to do that and stuff like that? So there's just some things you have to consider and talk to your tax representative and see what's best suited for your family.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you again. We're at our time. We are not hosting a December webinar. Going to give everybody a break for the holidays. And we will be back in January on the second Wednesday with another webinar. So look for information on that, everyone, on the website. And have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And thank you again, John Finch.
And
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you all.